All right, I'm here to talk about artificial intelligence, more specifically AI agents and assistants. And I'm hoping to convince you to think about why they're sort of useful in your job. So I'm Anders. I work in Futures Lab in Schibsted. It's a research and development unit that focuses on emerging interfaces and emerging technologies, and we try to look at how we can apply those to the different parts of our companies. We do that through research, through what's called strategic foresight, and through experimentation. So we try to build prototypes, we try to build strategies that allow us to experience and sort of rehearse what different futures might look like. And it's a pretty straightforward process. We try to look at signals of change and identify trends so that we can create a database of what we think might be influencing different futures. Then we look at uncertainties, and we write scenarios, which are fictional stories about how different futures might play out in an attempt to discuss what futures are probable. And then we talk to our product people, we talk to our strategists, and we plan. And we ask ourselves, given that we think that this future will play out, what do we need to do today to prepare for that? And this all sounds like a bit of a theoretical exercise, so I will explain it through examples. And I've structured my presentation here today by, I want to show you a bit of our work, what we do within Schibsted and the various companies that we have with respect to AI and futures. And then we're going to try to relate that back to your industry and see if it fits in well, I hope. So I need to go a little bit back. So in 2022, in early 2022, something called GPT came out of closed beta. It was kind of masked by all the hype around the metaverse, and nobody really paid too much attention to it, except for a trainee in our team who had heard that language models were quite useful in interpreting and manipulating content, or rearranging content. So we built an experiment. We tried to get GPT to solve the Swedish university entrance exam, and it scored a whopping 95th percentile. It was better than 95% of regular students at interpreting text and being able to draw distinctions out of it. Then Emil, being a young lad, did the natural next thing, which is he made a Tinder profile generator that would write his profile out for him. I didn't ask about the success, but we saw that it was pretty creative in the way that it could write, which sparked another idea, which was, okay, we know that GPT can take text and then it could change texts into different formats and it can be creative, but what if we feed it data instead? So we fed it weather data. We built a weather avatar that took weather data from Yr in Norway, the Meteorological Institute, and we fed that forward to a system that would then it would create tweets and then would feed it forward into a system that would create avatars so that we could have characters that read you the weather. Now, none of these three initial experiments were very useful, except that we learned the capabilities of these systems. But as a company, this is, frankly, shit ideas, as we would call them. But what we learned was that we can use language models to create versions of stuff. And versions of content is a gold mine if you're working in media, because it means that you can take one article and turn it into different sized articles, something that most journalists do not want to do. If they've written a nice piece, they don't want to cut it in half. So we worked with media to create summaries, and then we worked with media after that, again, to create sort of interactive news and news experiences where you could have a conversation about the content. But this was back in 2022. And since then, a lot of stuff has happened. Most of you probably know about GPT or language models. There are many of them. They can do many different things. They can generate text, they can generate code, they can generate images, video, audio, 3D figures, etc. They're very useful for a variety of different purposes. They're also a lot better than what they were in 2022, and the development here is extremely rapid. They can remember more things. They're now what's called multimodal, meaning they can interpret an image alongside a description. And because of that, a lot of people are building tools with this. We see AI assistants in a variety of different industries. Everyone is trying to put this into their products in one way or another to increase productivity. And we're seeing weird stuff happening, like people anthropomorphizing AI, meaning you build a human connection or you treat it as a human. So I don't personally have a replica, but a lot of people do. And if the replica disappears or if it does a mistake, people are kind of sorry for it. And if you ask GPT about something, you'll typically throw in a please or thank you, which makes no sense given that it's a computer. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening around this. This is Meta's celebrity avatars. They're made and based off celebrities, but this is not a person talking.
Hey guys, it's Billy. I just want to introduce myself. I am here to chat whenever you want. Message me for any advice. I am ready to talk, and I hope to talk to you soon.
You can deploy these at scale via services like HeyGen. You can have 50 avatars running for your company that look different, that speak different languages, that can have sort of unlimited length conversations with people. It's really, really simple. 2 years ago, this was a huge problem to put into practice. We're also seeing this sort of intersection between language models that can understand our world and can take input being built into robotics. So you have robots that run these models that also are able to move around, and you'll see what that looks like.
Hey, figure one, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great, can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Probably spend an hour talking about just that demo, but it's insane how good these things are at interpreting and understanding our worlds. And this is useful for a variety of different scenarios, which is one of the things that we do in our workflow. If you think about education, which is one of Bill Gates's big topics when it comes to AI, creating assistants that for children that follow them throughout their education is a huge win. It can allow us to create equal education. It can give everyone access to tutors that know what you struggle with, that know what you excel at, and give you personalized follow-up. This is something that typically only extremely rich people can afford today. But you can do this at scale for virtually no cost in the near future. We're using this at work. I use artificial intelligence I use it every single day at work. I use it to plan presentations. We use it to summarize meetings. We use it to reply to emails and a lot of other different things. And it's an interesting concept when you think about assistants in the context of a home. A lot of people live alone. Almost 45% of Swedes live by themselves. We get more elderly people. These are systems that we can put in place to help connect people to other services through natural language and through normal interactions. So we're sort of getting to this point where we can envision, it's easy to envision futures where conversational interfaces and assistants play a role. But honestly, we haven't really built these type of services before, and we don't really know when they're relevant and when is it a good idea to have an assistant and when it is a bad idea. But to learn more about that, we prototype, we build more stuff. And I'm going to show you 2 examples. I'm going to skip the last. The first one, and I will sound like a sadistic boss when I talk about this, but everyone really hates writing weekly updates about progress, plans, and problems. It doesn't matter who your employees are. Most people don't like doing it. And so we thought, okay, what if we built an assistant that interviews you about your week and then creates a summary that's sent to the manager so they have an overview of what's going on and where they need to troubleshoot. And we wanted to test that, see whether we could put that into practice. So And we wanted to try to build a physical device because we hadn't done that before. So we bought a phone off Finn. We tore out everything inside. We put in a small computer and some sensors. And ultimately, we had a small old school phone that ran ChatGPT with a custom agent on it. And it looks like this, or works like this.
Hello there. How was your week this week?
Hello, it was good. I got to do some fixes and improvements to our digital user interface, and I also got to learn how it is to work closer with a designer.
That's great to hear. Can you tell me more about collaborating with the UX designer? What made it so successful?
The point of this test, one thing was to see how people interact with assistants like this. The other point was to test how difficult is it to make. And it turns out that creating an assistant that asks follow-up questions and follows a specific format is very easy. It's a few lines of instructions and a GPT backend, and you can create this that does that pretty easily. Forwarding it to a documentation system also is like pretty easy to do. But what we learn is that people have different preferences when it comes to how they interact and how they do things. Some people prefer to sit alone and write. Some people prefer to talk. Some people think it's horrible to work with a physical phone and it's tiring. But the concept in itself, for us, illustrated an important thing, and that is that we need to think about how we can make it easier for people to do these kind of interactions. And I think this applies to jobs as well. Like, we could imagine assistants like this that help people write applications. Not everyone is great at writing stuff and sitting down and hammering it out. Why can't this be a conversation between you and a fictional friend about how your week or why you're interested in a certain thing looks like? We've also done this for a different purpose for real estate. The next video is in Norwegian. It's very short, though, and I'll explain it.
Nei, for stort, for gult, for nytt, for høyt, for lite, for slitt.
Vi ser i snitt 364 boliger før vi bestemmer oss.
Nei.
På internett, heldigvis.
So we look at 364 apartments before we decide on one. The prospectus of an apartment can typically be up to 16,000 words, some of which are very complicated legal words. Meaning 364 apartments times 16,000 is a very tedious task if you want to do a thorough piece of job there. And again, this is where AI can be very useful in our research. We can build assistants that have different purposes that are supposed to look out for different things. It'll scan documents. It'll give the users what it is that they're looking for. And of course, reference the original, the origin of where it came from. Now, I don't typically work only with jobs. So this is my simplified view of how a jobs process typically looks like. You do some discovery work, you research a company, you apply. If you're lucky, you might get assessed. And if you're even luckier, you might get hired. And you flow through a myriad of different systems to be able to do this. Maybe you start in Finn, and then you're redirected to a company website, and then Jobilon to apply. And then maybe you're sent to software to do an assessment or screening, and then you go back to Jobilon, and it's a bit bouncing around places. Or if you're lucky, somebody knows someone, and then you're automatically sort of into this thing, and there's some cool tools for that as well. I have no affiliations to anything, by the way, except for Schibsted. But there are tons of things that we can do here that are pretty straightforward and that we can do today, and that we're already sort of started with. So in Finn, we're building job profiles for users. It gives us more context about the people that are looking for jobs, meaning we can give that to recommendation engines to create even better matching services. It's a very straightforward thing. We can also use generative algorithms like this to create better listings. On our marketplaces like Oikotie, we can do abstracts of positions, we can tailor that to what different users are interested in. So there's opportunities there for us. And then there's a million tools that do interesting stuff. This is Wanderer. It's a discover your life path kind of experience. You connect your LinkedIn, it learns about what you've studied, what you've done in the past, and it suggests potential future life paths. And if you're interested in one of them, like if I wanted to swap jobs and become a research and development manager or an edtech entrepreneur, I can click into that and I can simulate how that would look like. And I can also benchmark my skills currently towards that. And you can go through this exercise where it's a day in the life of, in this case, a production manager in manufacturing, which maybe is not my cup of tea, but it's a very interesting and different type of experience. You have writing assistants. LinkedIn is a good example of this, how you can auto-generate descriptions about your profile. You can do this on either end of the spectrum. As a hiring company, you can use generative algorithms to create ads. You can feed it historical ads, like ads that you've had before, so that it learns how you typically formulate yourself and get assistance on how to write that. For applicants, they can use this to create their applications, and many do. And I'll get a little bit back to that. You have tools like Textio that can detect bias in text and analyze. It can help you automate email responses, etc. And so it'll, like Sumit was talking about, detect bias if you're using words that are loaded towards men or women or certain groups. Like men typically like when it says ninja, and women don't. And then there are cool tools like Dovetail, which we use in user research, where it's a kind of companion that you invite into an interview. It's just observing. It'll take notes. It'll tag different things that people are saying, and then it'll do a semantic analysis and clustering afterwards, so you can compare what has been said in different interviews and contrast them. Made for user research, but very useful for interviews as well, and they're sort of expanding their portfolio. Now, when it comes to these tools like Dovetail, which I think is great, it's starting to get borderline, because Dovetail is close to what is called assessment of candidates. And assessment, using AI for assessment of candidates, is something that's in the new EU Act very strictly regulated. There are heavy fines. They are heavier than if you breach GDPR. And you need to be able to explain how an AI system is taking their decisions to be able to use them. If you can't explain it, you can't use it. And generative AI algorithms, like large language models, are not very explainable, unfortunately. Which brings me to my dystopian part of this. I don't know why, but I decided to end on a low. I'll try to pick it up. But this is a brilliant piece that I came across in researching for this. It's by a lady called Aki Ito. It's an article titled "The Rise of Job Search Bots." And Aki Ito, like many, had previously been in the job market. She had a job when she did this, but she had previously been applying for jobs, spent evenings writing cover letters, putting effort and emotions into trying to apply to a job, doing research, only to get met with what? Macro emails or no responses whatsoever for the majority of the stuff that she applied to. So she was a bit pissed off, and she thought, okay, I'll get my revenge. I'll do the same. If the hiring companies are using tools to be productive, I will do the same. So she she used 3 different auto application tools. And I'll show one of them just after this, but they're a little bit different. One of them is called Lazy Apply. It does what it says on the box, sort of. You fill in, you're connected to your LinkedIn or your Indeed account, you say how many applications you want to send out, and it just goes bonkers. Just applies to everything. Non-stop. If you buy the premium tier, it's unlimited. There's a medium. Then she used another company called Ladders, which does the same thing, but before the application is sent, they have a team of professionals who read through what the AI wrote, just to do some quality assurance. And then she used a third tool called Simplify, which also does the same thing, except it shows it to you, so you have to verify your own stuff. So it's a bit more manual work. And this is what one of these tools look like. This is it in real time applying to jobs on LinkedIn. Now, she stopped this experiment, luckily. But these are, you can go into the websites and do this yourselves if you want to. But out of the 126 jobs that she applied to, she got a response from 7. That's a 6% success rate. The majority of, she called everyone. The majority of these people didn't know that she used an AI. And why would they? It's honestly indistinguishable. Like the text it produces is very, very difficult to distinguish from human. And I think this, and this is my up slide to end with. This illuminates a scary future that I think we together need to work on solving. And that is, we're nearing the point, like currently, people on the one end of a user journey are using tools to be more productive because there are so many people applying to jobs. And then you have hiring companies that are using tools to filter through because they get so many applicants. This is not a great future. So there's something that we need to figure out as an industry in terms of how can we vet candidates in a better way? How can we make sure that the systems at least have an idea of what's going on either end so that we don't end up in this ever-escalating thing where you just get more people that put less effort into it because it's so tricky to get a job in the first place. So there's a lot of cool stuff we can do. But we also need to make sure that we think about how this can be misused and that we do it in the right way. Thank you.